Once again, this episode is being brought to you by Diesel Fuel Prints. Diesel Fuel has been in the business since 1991, and Andy has been printing all of my stickers since the early 2000s. He's been a guest on this show, and he's a friend and somebody I've worked with for a long time. So I can highly vouch for his business because I use it myself. Highest quality, weatherproof stickers, easy online ordering, and quotes on any size and shape sticker you can think of. Full color printing and 125 black and white stickers start as low as $25. Free shipping on all orders at dieselfuelprints.com. And my listeners get a 10% discount if they use the promo code AWP 2021. Check out Andy and his stickers. He does a great job. Let's get to the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is artist and musician Wendy Gadzuk. Wendy's super multi-talented artist and musician. She draws, she creates these three-dimensional sculptures. She's been in a ton of different bands covering a bunch of different genres, from action rock to punk rock to blues rock, all kinds of stuff. She's an incredibly interesting person. We had a nice, long chat about life and art and music and, influences and, physics and all kinds of stuff like that. She's incredibly interesting. Yet another episode where we kind of just are in the episode. No real intro. You're going to pop in during our conversation. That just seems to be the new norm these days. So as always, I would like to get you right to the episode. Everything about this show and this episode can be found in the description below. The links to my merch and to my website and to advertisers, all of the links to Wendy's social media stuff. She's got a bunch of social media for you to follow. Great episode, super fantastic guest. Very excited to get you guys to it. So let's get to it.
So I left Philly in 2001. I was in a band with my husband at the time. His name was Dave. We had a band called the 440s. Mm-hmm. And both of us had I'd been in Philly for 12 years. He'd been in Philly for 16 years. And we were just kind of worn out and done with it. His brother lived in Tucson, and we really liked the Southwest. So we kind of just decided, let's move to Tucson. And that was in 2001. We reformed the 440s when we got out there. That lasted for a couple of years. And
I'm guessing from the sounds of it, that was like action rock type of band.
Yeah. It was kind of like punk rock and roll, like hot rod rock and roll. People, a lot of people would call us a rockabilly band, but we were not a rockabilly band. But we kind of fell into that genre a little bit because... Sure.
A lot of that stuff rubs up against each other, for sure.
Yeah. Tattoo. I was in a band with three guys with greased back hair and tattoos. So, of course, we're a rockabilly band, right?
Yeah. You like always a guitar player, or do you play bass too? Or
my first band was called Dr. Bob's Nightmare. And I played bass in that band and sang. We all sang. I can play bass. It's been a really long time since I have.
You're such a good guitar player. You should just stay playing guitar.
I love playing guitar.
for the world's betterment.
Yeah. I mean, I love playing guitar, and unfortunately I'm having issues with these things now. I've got some arthritis issues. And, actually playing guitar, I find I just have to manage it in a way that is, moderate. So when I play a little bit, it really actually helps my arthritis. But when I overdo it, that's when it starts to hurt. So, yeah, I gotta get it just right.
Did you learn to play guitar when you were really young? Like, was it a thing you taught yourself, or?
I started music. The first thing I played was piano, and I started when I was 4.
Oh, wow.
And I learned to play by ear. So I think that was really instrumental in just my whole musical trajectory since then. And I played for about 10 years. I think I stopped for a while and started again. I played violin for a little bit somewhere in there. And when I was, I'd say 15, I think it was 15, I started taking guitar lessons. And I learned, some basics, but there's, do you play guitar?
No, not to the point where I would tell people I play guitar. Let's put it that way. I have owned a guitar and I know how to make it sound loud. That's about as much as I'll say.
That's good. But there's like a hump you have to get over. And I just feel like as a teenager, I never quite got over the hump. And, I could play, I'd learn to play like some Dokken songs and Leonard Skinner. But then I would stand up and try to play them. I'm like, oh shit, everything's different now. Like, this is hard, And I didn't quite get over the hump. And when I was in college, I had a roommate who was a bit older than me, who he wasn't in my school. We just happened to be friends. But he was like one of those old school Philly punk rockers. And he wanted to start a band, and he kept playing guitar, and he was just bitching about not finding a bass player. And finally I was just like, give me your bass, I'll do it. And that's how I started playing bass. And that was my first instrument. And then after a few years, after being in that band that played one party and then called it quits, I started Dr. Bob's Nightmare. We were a three-piece where I played bass. Todd Douglas was on guitar, and my ex-husband Dave Chamillard was on drums. And that was a fun band because we were all just I was a beginner. Todd was kind of a beginner, and Dave had he had gotten sober and had decided that he was never going to be able to play drums again if he wasn't drinking. And then met me, who happened to be sober, and pulled his drums out of storage and started playing again. And we played in bands together for a lot of years. So we all kind of had this beginner's mind and spirit in one way or another. That's awesome. It was a lot of fun in that way. And
so what are your current bands that you have going? I know you have the Motorhead band.
Yeah, that's the one that's most active right now. Motordead, mainly Fast Eddie era Motorhead tribute band. And I'm playing guitar, Fast Wendy Lee. And my friend Beth, the one who I was talking about, who was doing that interview that got totally watched. She's Lemmy. She's playing bass and singing. She used to be in a band in the Bay Area called the Loudmouths. Are you familiar with them?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so we met when I was living in Philly. She was in San Francisco, and I guess she read a review of us in Maximum Rock and Roll, and they were going on tour and sent us a letter back when bands did that in the mail.
Yeah, right.
So we're booking a tour. We want to play with you in Philly. And we did. And then, so that was 22 years ago. Wow. And now we're both living in Morongo Valley, about 4 miles from each other, playing in a Motorhead tribute band together. And awesome. Her partner, Sean, is on drums.
That's awesome. And then what do you have a band with Tony? Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing it's more of a project right now called Stone Meditation. We're working on that. We've done some rough recordings. We've got a lot of material, and we're trying to figure out how to take the next step, whether it be recording or actually putting together an actual band and doing shows, which would be a lot of fun. Tony's he's in a wheelchair. So he's paraplegic. So that has its own set of challenges. But,
yeah, I bet.
Yeah. But he was in a band when I met him, so it's doable. That's how I met him.
My last band, when we toured in Europe, my friend is a high level like tour manager, and he was handling Mastodon at the time. And he's like, dude, I looked at your entire tour schedule, and like, you have a date where you can play with Mastodon in Haarlem, Netherlands. He's like, I figured it out. I figured out that you can get there from your one show, play, and get to your next show. You have a day off. you're opening for Mastodon. And I was like, okay, cool. That sounds fun.
Uh-huh.
And then we got there, and the other band playing is this band called Greyline, who was like like an Amsterdam kind of, and their singer guitar player is in a wheelchair, and super talented dude. Just like didn't seem like he was. I think he'd been doing it long enough that they had sorted out how to like get around a backstage and in a live venue with him being in a chair and stuff. But yeah, that band was really good. They were super
Are they
good.
called Greyline?
Yeah.
Cool.
You know, I don't even know if they're still around, but it was like one of those things where, you know, we were like, you know, my band had, if we had played with Mastodon 15 years earlier, it would have made more sense, because we're just like like the
What
entire,
was your band?
they're still around. They just have a different singer, but DIS, Destroyed in Seconds, and it's kind of just been shortened down to DIS. But it's just a bunch of my friends from grindcore and death metal bands wanted to do like a crust type of band, and so they're like, "You're like the old punk rock guy, you should sing." And so, you know, it like immediately we were like, you know, playing the middle of a day at festivals or higher up, and it was like I got thrust into this whole thing. So yeah, we were just way too noisy and like fast for a Mastodon opening slot. Like the look on everybody's face in the crowd, because it was a big fucking venue. It was definitely the most people we'd ever played. You know, we were playing in like punk squats and shit. We weren't playing in, you know, huge things until we started getting to the festival stuff. But you know, it was like 1,500 people, and they were all just like, "What is this? This is what is this?" And then you noticed like there was like a group of dudes who were like, "Yes, we did not expect this," and like this big ass mosh pit started. It was pretty funny, but
That's awesome.
yeah, I was in a band in the 80s, and we got to the point like we were right at the threshold of getting a deal and starting the tour and stuff like that. And then like I started having my kids, and I kind of got out of the music stuff. And then once my kids were older, me and my ex-wife got divorced, and my sons were 18 and 20, and they didn't, you know, and my daughter was like 16. She was living with their mom. And so I was like, fuck, I'm just going to go back and finish off that thing I never got to finish off when I was younger. And it was, you know, it's like super fucking fun. I had like a ton of fun. Yeah.
So at that show, at the Mastodon show, did you guys sell a lot of merch?
No.
Okay.
I don't even know if we set up our merch table. I think it was one of those things where like, fuck it. Like,
well, you know, I can't remember the name of this band, but when the 440s were on tour, and I think it was probably 99, there was a band we played with a few times in New Orleans, and they were kind of like that. They're really good, like a goth country type band. You know, they're very unique though at that time. And they had told us about, they did this big festival, and I want to say they were opening, was that you?
No.
For Marilyn Manson or someone like that. And it was, you know, just fucking huge show, and people were throwing shit at them, throwing tomatoes, and, you know, and then after they were done playing, you know, there were two girls in the band, and they sent them out to do merch. And the guys were like, yeah, we're just, you know, packing up their stuff. They're like, we got to go get the girls and get out of here because this is fucked up. And they go over to the merch table, and they were sold like thousands of dollars worth of merch, you know? So like, even when it seems like everybody hates you, when you're playing to thousands of people, it's like, okay, 2,000 people hate you, maybe 2,000 people love you too. You know?
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, that is the one thing about being in a band that you have to kind of get over really quick, is trying to figure out what the fuck is going to happen from one moment to the next.
Right.
You don't know if, like, you could be in the exact right place on the right show with all of the potentially right crowd, and just like have it not go well, and then be in the exact opposite situation, and people are like, we fucking loved you. And it's like, you can't ever know. You just got to go and just the other thing I learned is, when it's showtime, and you just need to get up there and do your job. And it doesn't really matter if somebody peed in your shoe on the van or whatever it was. Like, you just got to get up there and deliver. People showed up, paid money, even if they weren't there to see you, they're there to see a show, and you've got to, you know, you're gonna be fucking professional and do your job. You know?
Have you actually had someone pee in your shoe?
No, not directly, but I do
Did you
believe
do
there was
it?
like a
Did you pee in
Gatorade.
someone's shoe?
I think there was a Gatorade bottle full of pee that may have leaked on everybody's shoes at one point.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, the old Gatorade bottle full of pee in the tour van story.
Yeah.
Every band's got that one.
Here for a guy.
Well, I'd imagine I cannot imagine what it'd be like trying to tour as a woman in a band full of dudes. Either you're just subjected to shit you have no that's unreasonable, or everybody's on their best behavior and it's not that bad. I'm sure it's both.
It's a little both. And most of my touring experience with guys was also with my ex-husband.
Oh, that helps.
So yeah, there was a buffer, but it's still a bunch of sweaty dudes in a van.
It's the worst thing on earth. Like 6 weeks of sweaty dudes in the United States too. Like, unless you get a hotel, you're not taking a fucking shower. So, and so, you know, at least in Europe, like they give you a place to sleep, a place to take a shower, food, shit like that. In the States, you're just going to stink for weeks. Like maybe you do laundry in the middle, in the middle of the tour.
Yeah.
Which was the other thing I learned about touring. It was like, I just figured out, like, buy a cheap pair of shoes, like the week before you leave. And when you get home, just throw them away. Tour shoes.
I never did that, but I can see how that would make sense.
Yeah.
I remember being on tour and I had this leather vest. We did this tour with Cretin 66. Have you heard of them from Kansas City?
I don't think so.
Well, they were probably best known in the underground scene for, do you know that song that Nashville Pussy recorded, She's Got the Drugs?
I do know that song, yeah.
So they wrote that song.
Oh, okay.
And we toured with them in 2001. And I had this leather vest that I think I wore like every night. And I just like pulled it out of my bag. I'm like, you know, I've been wearing this thing every night of the tour and it doesn't smell. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm wrong. Yes, it does.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, you know, that's just a fact of life. When you're touring, it's like everything's going to smell. Most things are going to be damp for longer than they should be, you know, shit like that. We were pretty lucky though that our drummer had like a really nice van that we called the Moon Goon. And it, like, you know, it had like electric reclining seats, and it had, you know, like a PlayStation. It was like a total family truckster, you know, and like, you know, he bought it. And so it was kind of nicer than it could have been. For sure. Yeah. But, you know, we used a trailer rather than, you know, putting everything inside the actual van. So we had some space to stretch out and shit. But
that always scared me. The trailer thing, driving with a trailer.
Yeah. It increases your chances of fucking crashing by like 70% or something.
Oh, jeez.
we had a situation when I was driving once where the fender on the trailer came off and buried itself into the tire and just shredded the tire off the trailer. And I was like, fuck. And we were, and of course we were in Alabama, in the middle of fucking nowhere in Alabama, bunch of fucking crusty dickheads in the middle of Alabama,
the Bible Belt.
in the summertime. And we were like, this is pretty fucked. And so, you know, we got on the cell phone. Our drummer found a place that could replace the tire, and we're like, okay, cool. So we like unhooked the trailer, I can't remember how we got the trailer there. We got it there, and it was in Georgiana, Alabama, which is the birthplace of Hank Williams Sr. And so everything in that town is like, Hank Williams, see where Hank Williams' house was, see where he grew up. He took a dip in this pond. Like everything was, and the place that replaced the tire was, specifically for replacing the tires on logging trucks. It was a logging area. So here we are, these LA fucking crusty punks. And like, we pull up to this and it's just literally like a line of fucking trucks with giant trees on them. And we were like, we may not live through this. This might be the end of it.
You like call people to tell them where you were just in case.
It was grim and it was so fucking hot. And then the guy who changed the tire was like totally a metalhead. And he's like, yeah, man, we like drive up to fucking Atlanta all the time. And, like, what's your band? And he's like, oh, cool. Like, do you have merch? And we gave him a record and a CD and he was like super excited about it. And we were awesome. Like, yeah, like I said, you never know what the fuck to expect when you're in a band, you're out on the road. You literally can't judge any situation.
I remember we were on tour in we were traveling through just like bumfuck Texas, like on our way somewhere. You know how there's like that fucking 10-hour stretch between like the main
entirety
city
of Texas, which is half of the United States.
And I had just been on the cover of Skin and Ink magazine. This was in like 97, 98. And I was hot. So I was wearing a halter top and we stop at this gas station that's literally in the middle of nowhere. And this young girl is there. She's like, oh, I just saw you in Skin and Ink magazine. I'm like, no way. Yeah. And this is like pre-internet days, where it's like you see this magazine at a newsstand and it just happened to be there at this town in Texas that probably gets like one tattoo magazine.
Yeah, that's fucking, it's a weird world and it's a small world and we think everything is like huge and disconnected and it isn't as much as we think it is. And like that's another thing that I've learned about doing this podcast is when you're talking about anything that kind of exists in what I would consider to be the underground, whether it's, music or art or whatever it is, it doesn't matter how far away from something you think you might be. Like you could be like super into death metal. You're still 1 degree separated from somebody in the punk scene or somebody in the art scene or whatever. And, it's like, it's crazy that like yesterday or like 3 weeks ago, I was talking to Brian Mercer and I didn't know he was friends with Buddy Nestor and they're like really good friends. And so when I had that fuck up with him where it didn't record, the next day, Buddy messaged me. He's like, Mercer said you fucked up his thing. And I was like, God damn it. And so then I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Buddy's awesome. And then I was recording with Buddy on Wednesday. And I was like, yeah, I got, I'm recording with, the artist Wendy Gadzuk on Friday. He's like, oh yeah. Like I talk to her every Friday on the dark art, like Zoom call. And I was like,
I just got a message from Buddy yesterday. Cause I guess you told him that maybe we were going to do our interview the same day as his. Oh, right. I just got a message from him just that said, I'm more important than you podcast wise.
That sounds like exactly what Buddy would say. Yeah.
I said, whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, that dude's awesome. And the funny thing about Buddy is that we showed in a bunch of shows in LA for years. And until the last like 2 months, I never really spoke to him at all, but like I was such a huge fan of his work.
Yeah, he's great.
Like I had a solo show at Hyena Gallery and I almost, Hyena is one of those ones where you get a spot in the gallery and the rest of it just stays, with the permanent kind of collection there. And I was like, just move Buddy's paintings away from my area so people don't spend all their time staring at his work. I'm kidding. I didn't do that, but I felt like doing it.
Oh, yeah. He's very unique. Like no one else does what he does. And you could immediately recognize his style.
Yeah. I've never seen anything quite like it. And his girlfriend her work is amazing. Like
amazing. I just saw her show with Adam McCarthy.
Yeah, I was talking to Buddy about that. Where
you can say her name, Rachel Bridge.
Yeah, Rachel Bridge. It was like one of those things where I had Adam on the podcast, and another one of those things where me and Adam grew up basically in the same group of friends. We had a lot of overlapping friends, same area, same age group, but we never knew each other, and we were both in video games in LA forever and somehow managed to never work together or meet each other. And then when I had Karen Hazmat on, she's like, you should have Adam McCarthy on it. So we started talking and we were like, how do we not know each other?
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. And so I saw that Rachel and Adam were having a show, and because we were in the COVID thing for so long, my mind was in that area of, well, I can't go do that. Like, I hadn't gotten my head into the, holy shit, that's something I could go do. Yeah. And so it did. And then I saw Buddies in LA, and I'm like, that's cool, but I can't go see him. And then, and then once I started seeing pictures of everybody at the gallery, I was like, dude, you totally could have went and done that.
Right. I know. I drove 2.5 hours to go see it. But we were planning on going to the opening, but again, it was a daytime opening, and I had to be at the gallery that I work with in Joshua Tree in the daytime. So I was expecting.
Is that a gallery that you work at? Are you an owner of it, or?
Well, it's called La Matadora, and I'm not the owner, but I co-curate. Kalina Hake is the owner, and she and I do the curating there.
Sorry, I have an air conditioning unit, and sometimes it drips. It just started dripping because it's so fucking hot outside. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just saying that Kalina Hake is the owner, and I do some of the curating with her. Essentially, we do a show every month, and I do every third show. So basically, I'll do 4 shows a year, and she'll do 8 shows a year. And occasionally, she'll rent out the gallery to somebody else for the month who wants to kind of do whatever they want to do with it. That's
amazing. I always like having gallery-related people on the show because as an art, like I have to imagine as an artist who also works at a gallery, it's because there's always such a huge difference between the artist and the gallery, like that relationship it exists. It's like a thing. And like to be the person, like to be a person who's in the middle of that's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Unique, I think.
I it's funny because a lot of people ask me, how do you find the artists that exhibit there? And I'm kind of like, how would I not? You know? I mean, like everyone I know basically is an artist, and I have more artists, you know, that I would like to show there and that want to show there than I could possibly give shows to. And, and I do a lot of group shows, and every time I do one, I think, oh my God, why did I do this again? Because it's a lot of work, but I love being able to have so many different artists in one space and be able to give that opportunity to a lot of people who I want to showcase. And I can't give them a solo show or a featured show, or just simply because there's not enough months in the year.
Yeah. I always like participating in group shows because when I go, I like to see everybody else's pieces and stuff.
Yeah.
Although, oh man, even the last few shows I've been a part of, I haven't bothered to actually go to. I don't know why, but even in LA, even down in LA, because I'm only 20 miles away, but like I'll still just mail my piece down there.
Yeah.
I think the last show I was in was at Lethal Amounts, and it was like, yeah, I mailed it.
When was that show?
I don't know. You may have been in it, actually. I have a feeling you may have been in it. Was Diana did it? Curated it?
Lux and Tenebris? Yeah, I was in that show.
Yeah, I had a feeling that you were. Yeah, I had a piece in that. I'm looking at the piece that I had in that right now.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I had 2 pieces in that show.
Yeah, I've known Danny forever, and I've known Diana forever, so it was like cool to be. It's the first time I've had anything in his gallery. He talked to me when he opened it about doing a full show, and then he took off and like went straight to outer space with that thing. And so I was like, well, you know, he's got bigger fish to fry than me.
Oh yeah, that was a really good show. There was some great work in that show.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the things that I love about my friends is one of the overlapping themes with all of my friends and like people I have on the show and stuff is people with good taste. Yeah. And I like that Danny has insanely good taste. And so
He
when
does.
he works with something with Diana, who has insanely good taste, well, it's nothing but good things are going to come out of that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah, I didn't
uh,
know Diana, but my friend Brooke Kent was also kind of helping with the curating.
yep.
So
I've
that was
known Brooke
that
since
connection.
forever too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
See, we're all just one big family who,
Yeah. Totally. It's like,
But that was interesting. Like I said to you, that I'm not surprised that you know Brooke and that you know Chet, but then when I saw that you were friends with Lenny, it's like that was just a crossover that's not as expected. Like I don't know how many people on my friends list have mutual friends as Chet Zar and Lenny Mental.
Totally, huh? Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's cool. It's there. It exists, and here we are.
One of my favorite things about the life I chose to have for myself when I was fucking 13 years old are all the amazing people that I've gotten to meet and get to know and work with. And it's like, when I was like 10 years old, I I figured out that I had some art skills, and my parents were very good about pushing that because both of my parents were artistic. My dad was like a pinstriper in the 60s, and he was like a hot rod guy, which is where I got my love for Rat Fink and Ed Ross stuff. And then my mom was more of like a kind of crafts person.
Mhm.
So there was always a lot of art going on, and other people in the family were artists, and so they were always like, "Hey, you know what? You're pretty good at this. We should nurture this thing in you." And so, like, once I kind of started getting pushed in that direction, all I wanted to do, like, I would just go through my dad's album and just like stare at the cover art and just be like, I want to do that. And then, whenever I would get see the hot rod magazines that my dad had, it was always like, there's like a page of like Ed Roth t-shirts or like, just like, t-shirts from like the iron-on companies that just have like weird designs on them. And I was like, I just want to do that. I just want to do that. Like, I never wanted to make comic books.
Mhm.
I was always like a single art type of person.
Uh-huh.
And then skateboarding happened, and then skateboard graphics. And that was like literally exactly what I wanted to do. And like, I just decided I was going to do that and never stop doing that. And the amount of bands and people that I've done work for or met over the last 37 years is like, oh man, I made the right choice for myself. It's like,
Yeah.
I can go to my grave being like, you were on the right road the entire time, dude. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's kind of awesome. Like, you were asking about my bands, and the last band that I had was in the Bay Area called Andalusia Rose.
Mm.
And I started that
I remember
band.
that band. I totally remember that band. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, that was you.
that was me. um, I hadn't been in a band for a while. And the last band that I was in before that was a band called Sucker Star, and that was in LA. I kept doing it after I moved to Oakland for about a year, and it was with a couple of Sharon and Blair, who used to be in Betty Blowtorch,
Mm.
and then Lainey used to play drums with Exene, among others,
Mm.
and my friend Punky, who she's been in a bunch of Bay Area bands from the '80s. She used to play with Blair in the Blair Bitch Project.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the last band that I was in, and I remember just feeling like I just couldn't do it anymore. I was in Oakland. Traveling was getting to be too much, and I quit. And it was just such a weird feeling because that was the first day, I think, in 17 years that I wasn't in a band. Like every single one of my bands had like crossover, and I was just like, oh my God, like, who am I? I'm not Wendy from this band anymore. Like, I'm just Wendy. And it was kind of weird, a little bit freeing in a way. I didn't
Yeah.
have to consider my band in every decision that I was making. Well, what if I go on vacation? What if we get offered an awesome tour while I'm on vacation? Or you know what I mean? It's like, God, just all this stuff that weighs you down, but it's self-imposed at the same time because the rewards are pretty awesome. But so I hadn't been in a band for a few years, and I started Andalusia Rose, and the material was a bit different than most of the bands that I had been in. Very much less punk rock, more kind of bluesy, like slightly, I don't even know how to describe it. Sometimes it's, bluesy, a little bit psychedelic influence, but I think that came a little bit later. But I very much focused on songwriting, and I just wanted to get this material out. It was my material at first. And our first record was just, I didn't even have a band. I just went to LA and recorded with my friend Brent Woods, who's a producer who used to play with Vince Neil, among others.
All right.
Sebastian Bach. Hope he's doing okay. I know he had some health issues. Yeah. But I recorded this whole, I recorded 5 songs with him, and then I did an acoustic recording myself and pressed it. Or actually I didn't press it. I waited till I had the band together and then we pressed it. But what was my point with this? My point was that I felt like, because I'd taken that break and that breather, and I wanted to start fresh, and I wanted to kind of approach this as a new band, like a new me or whatever, and see if this would appeal to a different crowd of people, because the music is different. I didn't want to use all my old bands and the, promo press material, and not that any of them were super famous or anything, but we did have some fans. And I realized as it went on, like, you know what? Why am I denying why am I denying this portion of what I have gained from what I've done in the past, to why am I not utilizing what I have gained? And I realized that some of these people, even though the music is really different, and I'm sure some people didn't dig it, but there's some people who really did and were like really stoked to see that I had kind of moved on and evolved as a musician, and wholeheartedly supported what I was doing. So, but it took a little while, because I really wanted to start like, this is different. This is totally different. This isn't going to, appeal to the same people, the same crowds. Let's see where it goes. But you know what I mean? Like
it goes back to that same thing about I was saying about being a band. You just can't have any expectations about what's going to happen. You just got to do what you're going to do and figure it out as you go. Because as soon as you try to, you think what's going to happen, everything's going to be different. But
also, I think the point is, like, there's value to this shit that we've done, in our 20s or whatever, that just seems so unfulfilling and so unrewarding, and seemed like, oh my God, the rewards were not outweighing the shit that you put into it. And it's like, we never got anywhere. But now, like 20 years later, it's like, you know what? There are rewards to that, because we did it, and we have something to show for it. And there's people who appreciated what we did then, who still appreciate what we do now, even if it's not millions.
The same thing, even,
It's just exactly what we were talking about in the beginning, like, we're doing it. We did it, and we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like, a couple things that are kind of like that. And I'm sure as an artist, you've had the same situations, is like, you make stuff and then you like send it out into the world, and it takes its own life. It takes on its own life. And like, you don't know where it goes or who saw it or what it meant to somebody, or somebody bought it, sold it, or it got passed on to, you can never know.
Thrown away.
You can never know. You can never know until you do. And then you're like, then somebody will come to you and be like, oh, I have this thing. And like, I like, it happens a lot with my posters, because I was so heavy into that scene for so long, where like, I'll just meet someone and be like, I have this poster of yours, and it was on the wall of my bedroom, like all through high school, and I stared at it all the time, and like, it meant so much to me. And I'm like, it's, you just can't know, especially with how much merch I do. I'll be in the most random place and see someone wearing a shirt I designed for some band, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I fucking did that thing. You know? Like,
that's cool. Yeah, and it's
I
the
love
thing
it. It's
too. It's like
amazing.
in order to really create a good piece of art or music or whatever it is that you do, you have to be really emotionally invested in it, and put yourself into it. And then as soon as it's done, you have to completely let go of that and of any attachment to it, and be ready to hear what anybody else thinks about it, and grow a thick skin after you've just like completely opened yourself up to this thing. It's like you have to switch roles as soon as that thing's done. Your role is completely changed. It's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I've always been super good at not staying attached. Thankfully, I know I watch other artists and they get so married to their pieces sometimes
Yeah.
that I see it a little bit in that Dark Art Society
Mhm.
web group where it's like people want to retain some kind of ownership after it's no longer theirs to own. That I don't understand.
Mhm.
I understand it, but it doesn't work for me, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of what I do is more illustration than it is actual like fine art.
Right. And,
I'm
and
able
you're,
to let it go much easier. But even paintings, like I just, like I have so many ideas in my mind and I have so many things I want to do that I have to finish them so I can do the next one. And
yeah.
so I never become married to them.
Yeah.
The
But
like,
also with your intention with doing posters and band art and that kind of stuff is for it to be mass produced
yeah,
and for
absolutely.
lots of people to have this thing that you did.
Yeah, but I've always done fine art too.
Yeah.
And so, the only painting I have ever refused to sell is the one that's behind me, that big green eyeball thing. Like
Uh-huh.
I love that and I would never sell it. Like the price tag on that is more than anybody would ever pay for it.
I hear you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have
Like
that. You see that? You can see a little bit that piece right there.
yeah.
If you can just see the hint of it. I had that piece in the show at the Hive Gallery in Los
Mm,
Angeles,
mm-hmm.
and it almost sold. Somebody wanted to buy it, but they wanted to know the story behind it. And I was actually on my way from Oakland to go pick it up, which is, like a 6-hour drive
Yeah.
because the show is over. And I get a call from Nathan saying, "Hey, I got someone here who's interested in buying it." And I'm like, "Okay, well, for $2,000, I'll drive down there and tell them a story."
Fuck yeah.
And it kind of went back and forth for a little bit, and I was just like, I can tell them how I made it. I can certainly tell them a story about the piece, and it just wasn't enough for them, or maybe they just really didn't want to buy it, and they ended up not getting it. And that was right before I moved here. And now that I moved here and I hung it up here in this house, and I don't want to sell it. And I'm so glad I didn't sell it. And I think that's the one that's the fellow's going to stay here.
Is all of your work figurative like that where it's like collage stuff? Do you also do like painting work and stuff? Because
Yeah.
your collage together do you consider it collage? What do you consider it to be? I don't
Well, I
want
call it assemblage, more
to
assemblage work,
yeah,
because I don't know, I think people tend to think of collage as more of a flat two-dimensional,
sure, yeah, cut and
Um,
paste type of
yeah, so
thing.
this is a lot of found objects, and I use animal bones. I use, uh, metal hardware, fabric. I, sometimes will sculpt. If I don't have what I need, I'll make what I need. I'm trained in jewelry and metalsmithing, so
Oh, okay.
I can use a lot of those metalsmithing techniques to cut pieces that fit into shapes that I don't, that I need to work for the piece. So I just do whatever it takes to make the piece work. But I also draw. So I have kind of two different bodies of work,
Mm.
and the drawings have emerged or evolved into more mixed media work on paper. So they started with ballpoint pen drawings. I'll tell you the little story about my drawings. I used to work in a restaurant in Oakland, and I would doodle on the back of menus when I was hosting.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this doodle that I posted on Facebook one day, and a friend of mine was like, "Is this available?" I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, you want me to make a painting of this or something?" He's like, "No, I want to buy that drawing." I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. Like I never even considered that, you know. I'm like, I guess, yeah, people draw and that's their art and they sell drawings. Like, why can't I?
Right. Totally.
So I'm like, well, maybe I should start drawing on better paper. But it was all with a ballpoint pen, which I don't know if you've drawn with ballpoint
Oh
pens.
yeah. I mean, growing up, that was a main tool.
Yeah.
Felt pens and ballpoint pens were like huge.
I love it. And it's incredible because my drawings are really, really detailed. And I was able to make the shading with a ballpoint pen look like graphite shading.
Oh, nice.
But it's so time consuming, you know, but nothing really gave me that same effect. So but ballpoint pen isn't archival either. It fades in sunlight. So I really struggled with that for a long time. Like, what do I do? Like, this is my medium. Like, I can't get anything to work like this, but there are serious limitations with it. But so it's evolved. So I graphite, charcoal. I've started using charcoal. I'm like, I can do in 10 minutes what would take me like 3 hours to do with a ballpoint pen. You know?
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So I do, charcoal, watercolor. And I took a traditional Byzantine icon writing workshop in Los Angeles a few years ago.
Whoa.
So we did the whole, like the gold leaf and the egg temperas and all that.
Wow.
So I do a lot of the gold leaf over clay bowl in my work too.
That's awesome. That is amazing. So like when you, like the gold work, is that just kind of like the same type of thing that like hot rod guys would do with like gold leafing, where it's like you put on the sizing and then you kind of just rub away what's not glued down type of thing?
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's finicky, but
that's one way to put it.
Used in traditional iconography is called water gilding. So instead of sizing, what you do is you paint on a layer of clay. So it's like red liquid clay. It's usually mixed with rabbit skin glue or something like that, and glycerin. And you let that dry, and then you sand it and burnish it so it's really smooth. And then you breathe on it, so it just activates the moisture in it a little bit, and then you lay the gold leaf on that.
Whoa, that's super cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's amazing. I would like to see that done.
Yeah, I have a little video of it somewhere.
Oh, I would love to see that. That sounds super fucking cool.
And the cool thing about that too, if you build up the layers of the clay thick enough, you can actually like emboss little designs in it too after you put the gold leaf on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How old is that technique?
You know what? I don't know. It's quite old.
It's got to be ancient.
I guess it's most known for, the Middle Ages, kind of that Byzantine style, but I don't know when it actually originated. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm listening to a podcast right now about the Black Plague, and it's all Middle Ages. So I'm immersed in the Middle Ages at the moment.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating.
The thing, like everybody knows about the Black Plague and like the plague era of humanity, but to like learn really crazy facts about what was really going on is, we were very lucky we avoided it. We just avoided it last year. Let's put it that way.
I know, we kind of had our own plague, but man, life was brutal back then, huh?
Oh my God. Well, I mean, the thing that's ridiculous in a modern sense is that it is all bacterial. Like, you just take a couple shots of penicillin and the plague would disappear now.
Right.
But the thing that people don't also realize, the plague still exists, and a certain number of people in a certain number of places in this world get it every year. It's not completely gone. It's just, we know how to, antibiotics wipe out bacterial infections now. So it's not really a threat on a massive level. Now we have to deal with viruses.
Thanks to science, right?
Well, I saw this meme that was like, modern people have lived long enough, old enough, and healthy enough to totally ignore the fact and deny that science and medical breakthroughs are the reason that they have been able to do
Right.
so.
I know.
We lived too long to became too stupid.
So it's funny that I have this book right in front of me right now. Have you ever seen this or read this book, The Butchering Art by Lindsay Fitzharris?
No.
She's a pathologist or something, but she runs a very interesting Instagram page. And this book is about the history of surgery and how really in the grand scope of history, anesthesia is very young. I mean, in the 1800s, people were getting surgeries without anesthesia, like brain surgeries. They were cutting open their freaking skulls.
I think right up to the Victorian times, I think.
Yes. They'd give them a leather strap to bite on, and that was about it.
My great-grandmother was alive when this was happening. That's how close it is to me.
It's crazy. It's crazy, and it's terrifying to think about that. And I thank God for science. My dad just passed away in January, and he was a physicist.
Oh, wow.
So, science has always been a big part of my life.
Is that why you guys were in the DC area when you were growing up?
Yeah.
I figured.
Yeah, he went to MIT and immediately got a job at what is now NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Mm-hmm. Back then it was called the National Bureau of Standards, but that's where he worked in his entire career.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love physics. I don't know anything about it, like on an actual, level of being able to, like, I didn't study physics in school or anything, but when I was in the video game industry, I had to deal with physics quite a lot in the creation of the worlds that we did. There's always a physics team that I had to, as one of the artists, had to work with on what we could and couldn't do with the physics model of the game. And then I started like reading up on quantum physics, like on my own as like, just like a hobby, and I love all that stuff. It's fucking amazing. Like the building blocks of the universe and, just like momentum and leverage and like all the different, rules of how things operate on this planet.
And how the same rules that apply to physical matter apply to just energy that exists in the universe, and how we can use that to better our lives in certain ways. I mean, it's basically like the theory behind magic, which seems very, separated from logic in physics and science, but there is actually a very strong connection there.
Yeah, my wife is super into a lot of that stuff. And are you familiar with the band Death Valley Girls?
Yeah.
I have Bonnie. Bonnie is actually this coming up week's episode. But I talked to Bonnie and we talked a little bit about that stuff, like the understanding of physics and magic and, like the difference between, like, some people think that physics is purely math and science. And then some people think that physics is like pure magic. And it's like, it's like somewhere in between those things sometimes. Right. Like, and I was saying when I was talking to her, like, my wife is super into like metaphysics and stuff. And I'm more into the actual like mathematical science side of it. So we have a lot of conversations about, how we see physics working in the world. And then I became aware of the concept of chaos magic. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and I started studying chaos magic like crazy. And I was like, oh, this is just how I see it, with a little bit of ritual thrown into it. What I mean? It's like,
it's fascinating how the more you research certain things that seem to have no correlation with one another, you see how really they are kind of the same, different manifestations of the same thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think that the way my mind works, I'm like a super logical person. I don't do very well a lot of times with like belief or like, and I tend to want to know if there's an actual answer more than feeling like I want to have an answer that makes me feel good. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's like, whenever, a lot of the times when I'm looking at stuff that's more spiritual or more mystical, I find that I'm like, oh, somebody just fancied up a more logical answer than I'm used to for something, you know what I mean? And it's like, and that's fine. I think I am also one of those people that, no matter what I think or believe or feel like I know, like it doesn't have any reflection on other people and what they think, believe, and know. Like I'm not the guy who's going to be like, you're dumb, you believe that. Like I don't fucking know. Like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
and
I don't know anything about anything, you know?
It also doesn't have any reflection on reality, you know, like
Sure.
The truth doesn't care what we think or like belief. I actually have a teacher who, she's kind of started out as a tarot teacher, but she's been more of like a life lesson teacher. And just how the notion of belief is complete bullshit. You know, it doesn't matter. I mean, and I just wrote about this in a blog that's on my website about how if this last year has shown us anything, people saying things like, I don't believe in COVID. Like,
COVID does not give one shit.
Yeah, who cares? Nobody cares if you believe in COVID.
It will kill you just as same. Yeah, I think there's a famous quote, I can't remember who it's from, that's like, the great thing about science is it doesn't care if you believe in it or not.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I get weirded out by people who are like, you're wrong, I'm right. Like that, that kind of thing freaks me out. I don't like it. I'm way too much of a, I don't know. I think, to be honest with you, I think the thing that cured me of that was being a parent. Like raising 3 kids to adulthood, I think put me in a space of like, I'm not interested in telling anybody what to do or how to do it ever again as long as I live. Got that all out of my system. You do whatever you want. It's not my responsibility.
Wow. Now, how old are your kids?
My boys are going to be 32 and 30 tomorrow and Saturday. They are 2 years apart, 2 years and half a day apart. And then my daughter's 27. Nice. Yeah, they're all grown up. They're all grown, and it's kind of just the clock is ticking on when I become when I become a grandfather. Which I don't want to do that. Only because I'm, like I was saying, like I raised kids. I don't want to be around them anymore.
But you can always give them back when you're the grandparent, right?
That's true.
That's what I've heard.
That's true. That's true. I'm still not sure that's gonna be good enough. I have an amazing relationship with all my kids. That we get along really, really well. My middle son and my daughter live, within 2 miles of me, which is one of the reasons me and my wife were in Echo Park for like 7 years. She's my second wife. My kids' parents, or my kids' mother and I split up in the late 2000s. But me and Christy lived in Echo Park, like right on Echo Park Avenue, across the street from the Echoplex for like 8 years. And, when my kids decided to settle down out here in the West Valley and we were looking to buy a house, I was like, let's just move back to the Valley. So we came back to the Valley, but, yeah, it's cool. It's cool having them out here. And it's, when you have adult kids, you just basically, they become like part of your friend group. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not even like they're my kids anymore. They're just like cool adult people that I hang out with.
Nice.
Yeah. And, they're like, my daughter's fiance he's essentially me. He's like a skateboarding punk rock guy. He has circle jerks tattoos, black flag tattoos and shit. And then, we're all, it's all part of the same culture anyway. So it's not like I have one of my kids where I'm like, I just don't understand them. You know what I mean? It's like, we're all do the same shit anyway.
Oh, that's cool. That makes
rebelling for my kids would have been like, going to college and like becoming Republicans or something.
Right. Which, some of the kids of our generation have gone that way. Not necessarily our group.
Yeah, that's like the weirdest thing to me is like the Republican punks. Like,
yes.
I was like, I don't think you guys were paying very good attention to the lyrics
Right.
for all those years. I don't think you were listening very, very hard. It was like, it's funny. Me and my wife were at punk rock bowling, and it's a fucking punk rock music festival. And there was one guy like in a MAGA hat, and and Refused were on, and they're one of my favorite bands. I absolutely love Refused, and they're literal communists. Like they have songs where they talk about being communists, and this fucking guy in the MAGA hat standing in the middle of a sea of thousands of punk rockers screaming at him, "Nobody wants to hear your dumb politics, liberal hippies." And I just started laughing at him, and he's like, "What?" And I was like, "That's all anybody here literally wants to listen to. That's why everybody's here. You're the only one, guy." Like, it was hilarious.
Oh, man. I just had a
hilarious.
thought. I can't remember what it was.
Oh, it happens. I found that one of the things that I have a hard time with when I'm recording with somebody is staying in the focus of the thought.
Yeah.
And trying to come up with a name of something, like somebody's name or something. And I'm like,
Sometimes you're looking for just like that word to describe what you're thinking, and you can't think of it.
Well, your mind is trying to do two things at once, because it's not it feels a lot of the time like a normal conversation, but at the same time, like there's a camera and there's and it's recording. And so there's like these moments where you like get sucked down that rabbit hole and you're like, oh wait, I can't.
Yeah.
I hope it's fun for people though. Everybody seems whenever I'm done recording with somebody, the thing I hear most is like, oh, that was awesome. It was just like having a chat with a friend.
Yeah. I mean, because I don't really know when this thing started. We just started chatting and it evolved into this. But I was just thinking, I did have a thought that, so the show that I have right now at La Matadora Gallery, it's called Six Fingered Beast, which is actually a lyric from a Christian Death song. And I've got Rick Agnew and Jatan Damone from Christian Death in the show. Oh, nice. So it's all artists who are also musicians, except my friend John Nicolai, who's a photographer and he's and painter, and he's photographed a lot of musicians like Patti Smith, Ronnie Spector, Joey Ramone. They're in the show.
Oh, wow.
And so it's also Fur Dixon, who used to play in the Cramps, is in the show. Monkey from the Addicts, and Jill Emery, who has played with Hole and Mazzy Star and the Heroin Sheiks.
Oh, wow.
But I was just thinking of a painting that John did for the show, and it's a painting, and it's a really great painting too. I'll have to send you a picture. It's John Lydon, and I guess he did a butter commercial. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Oh. So it's called Butter Mind the Sex Pistols. So it's totally like making fun of him, but it's still a really great painting.
Talk about weird Trump
politics.
Punks.
I know. So I think that's why.
I mean, it makes sense with Johnny Rotten, like that his entire existence is to be contrarian. So I guess I kind of get it.
Right. But yeah. Like he's done the anarchist thing for so long that it's like, okay.
I think in his mind, that's still the anarchist thing.
Yeah.
He's like, everybody hates Donald Trump. Then the best thing for me to do is say that I agree with him. That's the most rebellious thing I can do.
I mean, I feel like at some point rebellion is just juvenile. You know, like
some shit's just right and some shit's just wrong. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That was the thing that made me crazy about during the pandemic and a little bit during the Trump administration. Not that to get too political, I try to keep that shit at a minimum on here. Yeah. But there was I noticed a lot of counterculture underground people were like, oh, suddenly you guys trust the government. You know,
right.
We were always taught you never trust the government.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, if you're fucking 14, sure, that makes sense. But at some point, you become an adult and you can differentiate between what facts you can understand as being real,
Yeah.
and your desire to push out of your mind where that information came from. Because I think
Right.
that was where it broke, is people were like, they couldn't separate where the information was coming from what the information was. And it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I kind of felt like, well, I suffer from OCD, like diagnosed OCD. And so I've been at war with germs my entire life. And so I had a really good understanding of how germs work leading
Yeah.
up to this. So I was like, yeah, fuck that, man. So like I immediately was like, I'm like, this, don't fuck around with this, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's like, I feel like, with this information just being everything being readily available to everybody now, it's like now different agendas, if you will, are capitalizing on just making everybody mistrust everything, and it's just, at some point you just got to turn it off and tune it out and make your own decisions, because no matter where you're getting your information from, for example, when it comes to something like COVID or science or medical health, like, I'm not sitting in my house doing medical experiments, so I am getting my information based on something that somebody else has done, and I have to decide where that's going to come from and what is the most reliable. And that's what we all have to do. And if it's going to be some freaking guy in his basement on YouTube, or if it's going to be like the National Institute of Health that has a long history of, making things improve in the healthcare system,
Right.
You're free to choose.
That was always my argument with anybody I was in a conversation with who was trying to kind of deny what was going on with the COVID thing, is I was like, I mean, I guess die then. Like, like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I mean, at some point, that, especially now, like, that you could either be vaccinated and believe that you are the statistics, or you can not, and you can die. And I can't worry about what you're doing with yourself anymore, because it doesn't affect me anymore.
Right.
Now it really only affects you at this point.
Like, you can walk across the street without looking and not get hit by a car. Like, yeah, that can happen. Is it a good idea? No.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of the motorcycle helmet law argument all those years ago, where people were like, God damn it. And it's like, well, don't, die then, I guess. I don't know what to tell you.
I know. Yeah.
Go talk to Gary Busey and see how not wearing a helmet worked out for him.
Freedom. Yeah. But then if you don't have health insurance and you get into an accident, are you going to expect the government to pay for that? Which I support, but at the same time, like, if you had done something to make that less of a burden on the taxpayers.
Well,
yeah,
trying to figure out trying to get into the logic of people's minds nowadays with, like, it's like you were kind of saying, like, there's so much information now that it's too much information, it's like,
I know.
It's just, there's too many options for people to just latch on to the wrong thing.
Right.
And when you start delving into the human mind and how confirmation bias works, and how, like, all of these Dunning-Kruger, like, all these different things that people don't know that they are going through, they just think like, oh, well, this makes sense to me, but they're not considering that the things that they already believe are affecting how they're taking in the new information. They're not taking in new information with a clean slate. It's coming in under the lens of what they already believe. And people don't understand that that's what's happening to them.
Yeah.
Not enough people.
We all do that.
Of course. Absolutely. My big thing always, and I think a lot of it did come from growing up in the punk rock scene, is that question everything. Like, just don't believe anything for the sake of believing it. Like, so even now, like if I see something that I don't know about, or if I see something that I immediately completely agree with or immediately completely disagree with, I will go try to find the counter argument for it. And then I can usually figure out what's happening. You know what I mean? Like I try to, I have alarms that go off in my mind when I see information. Either I accept it too easily or I reject it too easily. That's usually a red flag for when I need to do some reading.
Yeah.
You know?
And I found just, through reading all this inflammatory propaganda, that's permeating everything everywhere, that, I tend not to trust any articles, no matter which way they're slanted, that includes a lot of adjectives, because they are telling you how to think.
Yeah. Any article that has pejoratives in it, I immediately disregard. I'm like, oh, they're just trying to sell me something.
Yeah.
And it sucks because maybe there's information in there that I need, and you've ruined it by making me not trust it.
Yep. And I'm amazed at how many people still fall for that, and I guess that's good because it works. But
if you have to make your point by discrediting the counterpoint or the person making the counterpoint in particular, I see that in news stories all the time, where it starts off where just the whole entire first part of the article is explaining why the people who are opposite this are dumb.
Right.
It's like, well, sometimes they are just dumb.
Right.
But
But what's your point?
But that's not the point. The point is, what? My gardeners are here. It's like perfect timing. It's like perfect timing.
I gotta go. I have a friend who is helping with this hardware store. I think, I don't know if they're going out of business or they're liquidating some of their stuff, but he's like, you have to come here and go through the basement and take a bunch of stuff. So that's where I'm off to now.
We both had perfect timing.
Yes.
Awesome. Wendy, thank you so much for being a guest. We had a super awesome conversation. That was fantastic. We got to cover art and music and a little bit of like life stuff. I like it. That's a successful episode for me.
Absolutely.
And I'll be in touch with you about when the episode's going to air and all that kind of stuff. So I will talk to you soon. Thank you for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one.
Yep.